Hi, friends. I sure wish that we were having a conversation face to face or over coffee, but this is the next best thing, I guess, at least during this season. So, hi.
So, we're here today to talk and extend a little bit more our series about the nuclear family. And what we're doing is we're taking snapshots of the Bible's first families and unpacking them to how they might be relevant to our life today. We've been talking about the literal first family, Adam and Eve, last Sunday and then in a couple videos. And today we're going to be talking about a section in Genesis chapter 3 that's commonly called the curses. Now, when we think about curses, I don't know about you all, but what conjures up in my mind is like this voodoo doll. And you got the pin that you're pricking the voodoo doll, and then the person feels it that the doll is made after some sort of
Right.
like witchcraft
A
thing.
little bit of Harry Potter.
Yeah, so yeah, that is not what's going on here. Okay, these are simply God saying in Genesis chapter 3, God talks to the serpent, he talks to the woman and to the man, and he's saying, "Hey guys, these are the consequences. This is what's going to happen because of your rebellion." And he speaks first to the serpent, and it's interesting in how he words this with the serpent that he curses the serpent and says, "Curse above all other livestock and other animals." Um, but in that curse is even a vision of redemption for humanity. And I think even within the ideas of the consequences of the sin of Adam and Eve, there is even shreds of what is going to help us become all that God created us to be, even still. It's just going to, they're pushing on things that sometimes can hinder us in doing that. So, uh, what it says in the text is it says to woman that there's going to be some challenges in childbirth, and that there's going to be some battle with in those core relationships with men, especially
Mm-hmm.
the husband and wife. And then it says to the man, "Hey, the ground is going to be cursed, not the man." Okay, the curse is not God sitting up there being the cosmic. We're not. There's no Adam and Eve voodoo doll in God's hands that God's poking with. That's not how this works, right? The ground is cursed, and what that means simply is that Adam is going to, in an agrarian society, is going to have a challenge for bringing forth the means to sustain them. Now, this plays itself out all the time, every day, in even our relationships right now. That there's always kind of this power struggle and this relationship struggles. And how does that look from your eyes?
Well, I definitely would say that within our 24, almost 25 years of marriage, we have had some of these seasons. And so I think it's really important that we acknowledge that there is no marriage, even the best of marriages, with the best counseling, the best training, the best upbringing. Every marriage is touched by the ripple effect of sin. And it is played out in our relationship, and I've seen it in other relationships with this tension. And we were made for intimacy. We were made for intimacy with one another in that blessed alliance on mission together. Intimacy in a blessed alliance on mission, which reflects in the fullest form God's image.
Mhm.
The tension within that is all of a sudden we now have suspicion, we have competition, we have mistrust, we have instead when especially when we're hurting
Mhm.
or things are hard. I think about our early years
Mhm.
with our kids with lack of sleep and some isolation. We have this tension of either becoming overly fused,
Mhm.
relying only on one another, or we become detached and self reliant, not interdependent,
Mhm.
but trusting self.
Yeah, and that's really just living out in our relationships what the serpent put the virus that the serpent
Mm.
put into that relationship in the beginning, and how we have owned that distrust. And so I think it is the tendency, it may not look the way it did to Adam and Eve, right? The cursing of the ground and all that stuff, because it was an agrarian society, and that's how Adam was going to do it. But I think it does work itself out sometimes in man trying to gain his significance and his purpose from his work. And instead of maintaining that connection, sometimes men feel like it's our role in the family to be the breadwinner, right? There's this weird pressure for that and to be the supplier, because I think that there's a sense in which we feel like we don't really have much to offer relationally. So this is all we bring to the table is I can put some cash down on the table and some food on the table here and there, and that's my role. And then I can sit in my chair and watch TV the rest of the night. And that is a diminished role that is kind of agreeing almost with this when it feels like God is saying, hey guys, these are challenges, but these are things that with my strength you can overcome.
Mhm. Mhm. I think too, there's this distortion that men and women tend to believe regarding success, and that uh, search for value and worth through work or through relationships. When in reality, we were made for success in the, like C.S. Lewis has talked, the weight of glory by reflecting in
Mm-hmm.
this alliance God's image. Now, for women and for myself, the way this is sometimes played out, I think about our early years of marriage. I was a different person in a lot of ways. And in our early years of marriage, I had so much baggage and I had a lot of wounds. And I looked to John to be something for me that he could not be. I looked to him to fill some of those places in me that really were about me developing into the woman God made me to be, or me having some healing to some of my childhood hurts. Now, God used him in my life, but God has also used lots of people in my life. He's been used in unique ways, and I'm very grateful for that. But I entered marriage thinking he was going to be my end all. I think if you would have asked me that, I probably wouldn't have said it until I had this, like, the Lord kind of allowing circumstances that he puts his hands on my shoulders and says, you're going to have to face some things about yourself right now because you're on this maddening chase to get something from man in relationships that will never fill. And I think we do that. There's a temptation to do that sometimes, ladies. If you have children, there's sometimes a temptation to get our needs and our value and worth through our kids. And sometimes that looks like the pressure for them to perform and be perfectionistic, or the fear that they'll experience the same wounding things you have done. And so life matters and is of value if they don't, and so you get controlling. I mean, it plays out in so many different ways.
Yeah, and because our modern society is very different than the world that Adam and Eve entered. This it also plays out with both of us, right? You look at families who April and I have worked for years with families who have been divorced, and there's always this kind of interplay of one holding resources and finances over the other, and the other maybe both or at the same time holding kids against the other and play. So there's all this triangulation that goes on, and we saw that in looking at the serpent and how the serpent introduced sin to Adam and Eve, and then we saw that in Adam and Eve's and God's first confrontation with Adam and Eve, and then we see how it's going to play out now, kind of systemically almost, because this isn't just between husband and wife. This is within all of society, right? We've all been in places where we have had the tendency to power up over each other or manipulate relationships and try to triangulate. This is a result of the fall. This is not God's best. This is not the allies reflecting the image to the world that desperately needs him. So, guys, as we are quarantined and as we are in tight relationships, let's make sure that we don't give in to the lie that there is some sort of superiority complex within the genders in the Bible. That is not it. God created Adam and Eve in his image. And And as this plays out, let's make sure that we push with each other, that we ally with each other moving forward, and don't allow ourselves to either disengage or overfunction within our relationships.
Yes, let's fight against the temptation to detach and just kind of go where we can feel like we can get a win. And let's fight the temptation to over rely and somebody that was never intended to meet the needs that God was.
We love you, and we will talk to you again Sunday.